Gulfem's story is silent about the details of her biography, but her image is ideally formed as a wise, honest and God-fearing woman. Gulfem Khatun's date of birth is unknown, but historians say that the girl was born around 1497. The data on the origin is also ambiguous. Some claim that she had Sicilian roots. At birth, according to some sources, she was named Rosalyn. In the Ottoman archives, her father's name was Abdullah or Abdurrahman. There is a version where Gulfem is the daughter of an Albanian bey, and there is an alternative version that the girl is of Turkish origin. Personal life and fate. Gulfem was not included in the register of Manisa Suleiman's harem as a concubine. Why this was done is unclear. Hurrem often mentions Gulfem in her letters, and spoke very well of her. Gulfem seems to have been a kind of supporter of Hurrem from the very beginning. Perhaps she was a senior servant in the harem, and not Suleiman's former concubine. After all, the jealous Hurrem would never have made friends with Suleiman's lover. The relationship between the two women was so close that when Suleiman was away from Istanbul, Hurrem always conveyed gentle and kind words to the Sultan from Gulfem in her letters. All this makes it clear to us that Hurrem treated Gulfem as her friend, who may have guided her in the early days and helped her navigate the harem, perhaps even gave her advice about Suleiman. Gulfem knew Suleiman very well, so she could help Hurrem and give advice on seducing the Sultan. But these are all guesses that historians cannot prove with anything. To this day, Gulfem is considered the concubine of the Sultan, to whom Suleiman lost interest. There is also an assumption that Hurrem was not jealous of the girl only because she did not show any desire to be Suleiman's favorite. But how did this mysterious girl die? Many believe that Gulfem did not have enough funds to build a mosque and therefore she decided to sell her habit with Suleiman and get money for it. When the girl who bought this right to spend the night with Suleiman, she blabbed everything to the Sultan and framed Khatun. The Sultan got angry and sent the mutes to Gulfem's chambers. She was strangled without the right to an excuse. In general, I believe that Gulfem herself and her death are shrouded in myths and mysteries. Unfortunately, we will not be able to find out the true truth, but there are many versions about her death. We already know the first official version, so to speak, but there are others. For example, Uluçay writes that after the death of Hurrem, Suleiman probably had connections with concubines, but only one name is known, and that was Gulfem. According to Sak-Ao Glu, the Ottoman historian Ahmet Refik Altanay, author of the book The Female Sultanate, tells the story of Gulfem's execution. When she could not complete the mosque in Üsküdar, Gulfem began selling nights with the Sultan to other concubines. The Sultan considered this behavior offensive and ordered Gulfem to be strangled. Uluçay writes that there is no confirmation of this legend in the archives, but there is an indication of a large donation to the Gulfem Khatun Mosque, completed in 1561, as well as a school and a turban at the mosque. In addition, Chagatai writes that Gulfem managed to complete her mosque in 1560 to 1561 and prepared the Waqf Charter, which was supposed to act to ensure the operation of this mosque. Chagatai believed that Gulfem was killed for another reason. There was also a version about Gulfem's drowning. Allegedly, the inscription Sihide, from Tur. Grave of Gulfem, however, as Sak-Ao Glu writes, such inscriptions were also on the graves of those who died from epidemics or an accident, as well as benefactors who died of natural causes. Sak-Ao Glu, without specifying a specific date, writes that Gulfem died after 1561 and was buried in a mausoleum at her own mosque. Uluçay writes that Gulfem was killed in 1561 to 1562, 969 AH. But these are not all the secrets that shroud Gulfem's death. There are also versions that mystical things happened to her grave after her death. For example, if we consider the first version with Gulfem's execution, then there is a version that after the Sultan buried his Gulfem, her grave began to glow in the dark. To me, this is a natural process, since phosphorus is released during decomposition of the corpse and graves can emit a barely noticeable glow for a while. Suleiman thought that this was a punishment from heaven. This is a sign that the woman was innocent, but suffered an undeserved punishment. Also, according to archival documents, Gulfem was initially buried in the courtyard of her mosque, but later a mausoleum was erected over her grave. After the mausoleum was destroyed in a fire, the tombstone over Gulfem's grave disappeared. a new tombstone with an erroneous date of death was installed next to a plane tree, which, according to legend, was planted by Gulfem Khatun herself. The mosque, turb, madrasa and mekteb Gulfem were destroyed by fire in 1850, but later, in 1868 to 1869, the mosque and mekteb were restored with public funds. The madrasa and the turban were not repaired.